Recently, I just introduced a custom elo ranking system for our community DLC mod, and let's just say I tried to master it. To see what I mean by that, we must look at the story of how I reached the top of the leaderboard with a 24 KD. My goal was quite simple: be the first ever person to reach Ultimate League, but this will be far from being easy. You see, the Versus Mode community has some of the sweatiest and most competitive tryhards. I'll try to teach you as much as possible in this video, so that even you can learn how to become better in this game mode. If you've never seen or played PvZ Versus Mode before, here's a quick 30-second crash course. The zombie player needs to reach the house of the plant, while the plants need to destroy the 3 target zombies in time. Whoever fulfills their objectives first, wins. In the picking phase, plants start by banning 2 zombies, while zombies respawn by banning 2 plants. Zombies then start picking their unit, while plants are able to counter-pick accordingly, which at the end allows for very high-level mind games. So without further ado, let's begin. My first opponent was Emre, and he started opening with a water pot. It was a pretty clear giveaway. He was most likely committing to a sea starfruit strategy. I immediately responded with hunter zombie, screener zombie, as well as ladder zombies, since shields without coffee beans are devastating against sea starfruit. I then started my game with my early basic rush. Since he skipped coffee bean and mushroom, he was quite vulnerable. I pressured lanes 1 and 5 specifically to reduce his starfruit's efficiency and threaten an early lawnmower. He tried to stabilize with the blood orange, which is a 3x3 explosive plant in DLC, which is another good reason to space his zombies out in lanes 1 and 5. The moment his first sea starfruit hit the board, I responded with his green dot. He panicked by placing a tall nut, but that was exactly what I wanted. I've been saving up brains for my ladder zombie, and the second a tall nut was placed, my ladder zombie was sent in the same lane. Once his sea starfruit was eaten, his entire defense started to crumble. In round 2, he tried to replicate my shield strategy, but since I hadn't committed any attacker yet, I was able to pick Lightning Reed, which evades his shields entirely. Between potato mines for his football zombies and hurricanes with balloon zombies, he was basically hard-counted and softlocked from winning the game. In my second match, I'm playing against Pepperlino. He's choosing a balloon zombie early, which gave me an easy opportunity to pick Cactus as a response. I was able to shut down his basic rush with a reactive coffee bean and mushroom setup, which leads us into the mushroom grave pressuring strategy. You see, mushrooms aren't just useful for our defense. Once the lane is stable, you can use their 3-tile range to damage the opponent's gravestones to further reduce their economy. This then forces them to defend their graves rather than to invest into more attackers. Note that I'm using squash and potato mine here because they both have a 30-second recharge compared to the traditional 50 seconds of, let's say, a cherry bomb. In the second round, I opted for the skeleton zombies. They hard counter potato mines by simply reviving themselves after its detonation. Pepperlino made a mistake by using his first mine on a basic zombie. In case you didn't know, a potato mine needs 3 tiles of space to reliably arm itself before basic zombie reaches it. But those 3 tiles could have been filled with mushrooms to counter my 1 lane swarm. This is why I then focused all my manpower on lane 4, which then forced him to overcommit and eventually lose. Match 3 was against Zeno. He started the game with a double upgrade strategy, which was insanely greedy. It was very easy to punish him. I immediately reacted by picking him. In DLC Versus Mode, the imp inherits its traits from the iZombie imp, meaning it's a high speed unit, but to compensate, it has very low HP. If you don't have a coffee bean and a mushroom, or any early game for that matter, you'll be overrun pretty quickly. In round 2, he must have thought the imp was broken and tried to use it against me. Because I knew how to counter it exactly, I was able to prevent his early game rush with good mushroom management. While the imps are hyper aggressive, they also lack any meaningful stacking potential. Once his rush died, I started to pressure his greystones with mushrooms to ensure he couldn't recover. We now have officially entered the Bronze League. Zeno is back for a rematch, and he's already made a big misplay in his picking phase again. He picked Twin Sunflower too early. You see, last match I used Twin Sunflower because I knew his loadout couldn't punish me for it. By picking it too early, Xeno just sacrificed the vital seed slot he needed for his defense. I'm punishing him immediately with a Gigagog and a ladder zombie to create too many high value threats he must answer with 1 less seed slot. Because he's lagging behind on his mushrooms and coffee bean placements, I saw an opportunity and immediately rushed 1 row with early basics. This only works if your opponent is slow with his mushroom management. He only has Lemonade as an explosive plant, and against a swarm this dense, he was way too expensive and inefficient to use. Once his lawnmowers were triggered, it was basically already over. In round 2, he picked Target Zombie way too early, which is a unit that can revive 1 last target zombie while stunning the lane for exactly 15 seconds. My immediate instinct was to counterpick him with a Starfruit. Typically Starfruit is great for general defense, but here it's also acting as a hard counter to target zombies, because it hits all 5 lanes and prioritizes gravestones first. Once all of his economy was gone, target zombie basically becomes useless because he had no more economy to utilize his stun. And then there's the Starfruit shotgunning versus skeleton zombie. You see, when a skeleton zombie is in its bone pile phase, you can make it absorb all 5 projectiles at once if you place the Starfruit directly on top of it. This increases your DPS by a factor of 5. Next up is Azzy. For this match, I brought out one of my signature zombie loadouts. I call it the Leaf Gog setup. Yeah, I mean you can tell I'm not very creative with my deck names. This is a prevention pick loadout. In the current meta, Fireshroom is a massive threat to my screen door shields. By picking Leaf Blower early, I create a dilemma for my opponent. If he picks Fireshroom, I hard counter him with my Leaf Blower, and if he's too scared for the Leaf Blower, he doesn't pick it, which then makes my screen doors become much stronger. Azzy accidentally wasted his blood orange on absolutely nothing. With his explosive gone, I opened up a new front with the dancing zombie, which made him very defenseless. In the second round, I had to be more careful. Azzy picked basic zombies as well as backup dancers, which are very strong early game units when combined together. But he made a classic beginner mistake. He spread them out on all lanes at the start. Spreading zombies across different lanes lanes makes them very easy to defend. Instead, you need to swarm a single lane to overwhelm the push rooms. Because he didn't pressure me properly, I was able to stabilize every lane with push rooms. Later, he managed to breach through lane 5, but he got too greedy. Instead of baiting properly, he started spamming every single unit for the win in lane 5 and walked straight into my cherry bomb. It would have been way smarter for him to bait out my cherry bomb first by swarming lane 5 and then checkmating me with a pogo zombie. Now, you might think reaching Ultimate League might be very easy now considering our first 5 games, but our current run is about to face its greatest opponent yet. My next fight will be against Yasname. Given he's won and played in so many tournaments in the past, I would consider him to be the second best versus mod player in the entire community. Right now, we started counter-picking each other. Yasname made a rare but crucial mistake. He picked a second explosive instead of an attacker for his 4th seed slot. This was exactly what I needed, because he lacked a proper AoE explosive like Doomshroom or Pickle Pepper. I had the perfect opportunity to pick Flag Zombie as a response. Without proper wave control, my Flag Zombie swarms could take over the game uncontested. Right when the first game started, I used a so-called newspaper bait in lane 5. By intentionally leaving the bottom lane empty of Greystones and by sending a single newspaper zombie there, I forced him to respawn with a mortar shroom, since a single push room can't stop a newspaper bird zone. This did 2 things. First, it drained his economy, and it also forced his attacker into a lane where it couldn't threaten any of my Greystones, which then lets me develop a much stronger early game economy by sacrificing that one lane for the greater good. It worked. He was so heavily pressured that he had to shovel his own sunflower away just to make room for another mortar shroom. And while Yasname was trying to recover, I started a Flag Zombie chain reaction on him. The reason this works is because Flag Zombie has a 30-second recharge. Every new wave acts as a protective shield for my economy, which in turn generates more brains to chain more Flag Zombie waves back to back. Without any proper AoE, it becomes very hard to break free from this stage of the game. We have won round 1, but our job still isn't finished yet. Yasname, while practically undefeated in OG versus mode, he hasn't fully studied the DLC meta yet. That is where my territory was. To take him down again, I needed to use a setup that he hasn't seen yet. This is where my Twin Star setup comes into play. It uses Twin Sunflower as well as Starfruit to stabilize myself from the early game basic and imp spawn rush. This is a very risky setup for reasons we will dive in later. Yasname basically responded perfectly with newspaper and screen door shield. In OG versus mode, those would have been hard counters to my Starfruit, but this is exactly what I wanted. I knew the DLC meta well enough to understand that Bong Choy counters shields entirely. And once a Bong Choy was established in every lane, it basically became an unwinnable matchup for him because he had picked 2 zombies that are completely weak to Bong Choy. Yasname tried to pull off a Flag Zombie comeback, but because I was anticipating it, I was holding my Pickle Pepper ready. And by adding an additional Lemonade to the charge, we can shut off his Flag Storm entirely due to how they can be used together whenever the others in recharge. Game 7 was a rematch against Azzy, and I'm opening with a strategy developed by the god of versus mod himself. He is known as Skull. He's also known as the best versus mod player in PvZ history, with mechanical skills that are so optimized that he almost never makes a mistake. He's won nearly every single competitive versus mod tournament there was. He invented and taught me the backup rush. He theory crafted that by placing a backup dancer in column 7 followed by a basic in column 8, you can create one of the strongest openings in the game. You see, backup dancer occasionally dances, which makes them move slightly slower than basic zombies. If you place both zombies in column 7 at the beginning of the game, the basic zombie will always get ahead, die from the push room, and the dancing zombie will be too slow to catch up. By spacing them out 1 tile apart, we can essentially use the backup dancer as a meat shield for our first basic zombie, which then puts a lot more pressure on his push rooms, because he will walk and therefore eat faster. Thanks to this innovative tactic, I was able to force an early tall nut out of Azzy. I then waited until his cherry bomb was baited out so I could drop my ladder zombie down. Without baiting the cherry first, we would lose the ladder grid item as well as the ladder zombie from the explosion. In the next round, I went back to the Twin Star setup. It's one of the rare setups that allows for 3 explosives, but at the same time, it's incredibly fragile. It looks like Azzy knew how to exploit it. He swarmed my outer lanes, which is exactly what you want to do against a Starfruit build. This then caused me to lose a lawnmower, which resulted into me panicking. He baited my cherry bomb out, and before I had enough time to recover with a blood orange, he checkmated me with his pogo. I actually lost my very first round, but the match wasn't over yet. Because this is the best of 3 format, I still had one more chance to correct my mistake. In round 3, I had to stop playing around. I saw Azzy wasn't running any coffee beans, which meant no magnetrons either. I exploited that instantly with a football zombie as well as a buckethead setup. Both of these zombies have a 30-second recharge, which is 20 seconds less than any hard explosive. In a normal game, running these 2 can make you very weak to magnetrons or firetrons, but since there's no coffee beans, it becomes one of the stronger late to mid game loadouts in the game. Next up, we're facing Birdie, but Birdie is no stranger to me. Nowadays, he's become a nightmare to play against. I know this because he has beaten me countless times before, and whenever I face him, our games become the most sweatiest in the entire planet. In round 1, Birdie proved his massive amount of game knowledge in DLC versus. He baited me into picking magnetrons to counter his football zombie. He then picked the dancing zombie on top because he knows exactly how weak magnetron is into dancing zombie. I felt already soft-locked from the game. Looking at the massive amount of swarm potential in Birdie's loadout, I panic-picked into Lightning Reed, which would prove to be a fatal mistake. Lightning Reed has a terrible space efficiency. In the already cramped versus mode board, I couldn't build enough DPS on time to stabilize my setup. Against any normal player, I might have been able to recover fast, but Birdie knows how to not make any big mistakes. He exploited my weak spots in lanes 1 and 5, and just like that, I got completely owned by him. I was down 0-1, and in order to make a comeback, I had to win the next 2 rounds in a row. I decided to go back to my Leaf Gog setup. I knew that Birdie lost picking Fire Shroom, but I also knew the Leaf Blow would keep him away from picking it. He committed to a Magnetron setup instead, which was good news for me. I immediately swarmed multiple lanes to create more pressure than his magnet setup could handle. Once successfully taking out his lawnmowers, I waited for an opening and rushed a Giga Gargantua in the same lane. This was exactly what I needed. Giga Gargantua becomes a very strong win condition as long as you're able to trigger a lawnmower early on. This now makes us even in score. It all comes down to the final round. I knew my typical strategies wouldn't work well against him. Birdie simply had too much experience in dealing with regular DLC meta setups, so I had to gamble on a twin star setup. It's relatively new, meaning there's a solid chance that Birdie doesn't know of its existence. He might not fully know how to play against it. However, once Birdie saw my Starfruit pick, he responded with the Giga Gladiantua boss unit. This was a very smart move, since this historically has been a hard counter to any Starfruit setup. Because Starfruit is notoriously bad at pressuring Greystones, the Zombies players gets to freely develop their economy into developing their boss zombie. If not dealt with on time, the added pressure would stack up and overwhelm us quite quickly. My only out here was Jalapeno. You see, any smart player spawns the Gladiantua in the far back, where cherry bombs and lemonades cannot reach them. But since Jalapenos covers the entire lane, it will always be able to do 1800 damage to the boss, which only has 3000 HP on total in this game mode, meaning 2 Jalapenos is all it takes to eliminate him. I needed to be very careful though. Sometimes Giga Gladiantua can avoid the Jalapeno by switching lanes, so I had to read and predict his next ability before blindly burning a Jalapeno. At the end, it became a brutal battle of attrition. It was very nerve-wracking and it took us 10 minutes, but we came out on top. We just dodged a massive bullet right now, and if we have to take anything away from this, then it is to never underestimate Birdie. And just like that, we're kind of f***ed again. I'm queued up against Yesname again, and I can tell he wasn't happy with his earlier loss. Yeah, this was bad news for us. He's notorious for being good at adaptation. He knows my setups now. I had to try outsmarting him again. But how? Surely the twin star setup won't work a second time on him. I needed to somehow innovate. In round 1, I decided to use a front sunflower trick. Any experienced PvZ players knows not to place the sunflowers in the back, since they're cheaper to replace than your attackers. In versus mode, the same logic applies, but for different reasons. By placing sunflowers in front of your mushrooms, you can create a so-called buffer zone, which also produces more economy to sustain my expensive pepper pulls. Because I had picked Pickle Pepper earlier, Yesname's Flag Zombie waste couldn't create the chain reaction he needed to stabilize his economy. Now I just needed to use a setup that isn't Leaf Garg so I could remain as unpredictable as possible. In the next round, Yesname decided to run a version of a setup called Garlic Gambit. The name was first created and popularized by Birdie, but people have used Garlic Gambit setups ever since Versus Mode was around. I knew that the traditional Garlic Gambit setup was very vulnerable to Bungie zombies, because it prevents the expensive 3-peater pick, which is extremely important for that setup to even work. It looks like it did wonders, because it forced Yesname to dodge his pick into Kernel Pulse. He was using Lemonade in combination with Garlics in lanes 1 and 5 to clear my Flag Zombie waves, but here's a fundamental problem with that. Lemonade has a 50-second recharge. My Flag Zombies only have 30. I knew that if I kept spamming, eventually his entire defense would fall. In the end, it became a war of attrition again, and a good lesson that Kernel Pulse cannot meaningfully replace 3-peaters and Garlic Gambit setups. And just like that, we've been able to defeat Yesname again, but this won't be the last time we encounter him. In match 10, I faced Emre again. He started with a massive mistake right away. By picking Basic Zombie, Newspaper, and Scarecrow, which are 3 zombies that are vulnerable to Lightning Read, it essentially eliminated all 3 of his seed slots once I was able to develop them on my board. And since I knew his late game threats were all metallic, I shut off his entire defense with Magnet Shrooms. He basically already lost the game in the picking phase. In game 2, I was able to punish his non-Bungie ban and early Starfruit pick by picking Bungie Zombie. By doing that, and because Squash is banned, he was basically forced to pick Umbrella Leaf, which sacrificed a valuable seed slot he desperately needed for an AoE explosive plant. And with no explosives and 4 flags later, he was starting to get overwhelmed quite a bit. Okay, Emre is back for a rematch, and this time he was trying to be more careful. He cut out all the weak zombies to avoid dying to Lightning Reads again, but now he did the complete opposite mistake by running 0 early game this time. Without any basic zombies to apply any early game pressure, my Pushrooms could just freely attack his Grey Zones, basically uncontested. His economy was devastated, and by the time he saved up enough brains for Gladiantua, it was already too late. In the next round, he repeated the same mistake, but this time his plants by not picking any early game either. Once I identified a weak spot in lane 4, I started to push everything onto it, which creates one massive pressure point for him to handle. He tried stabilizing it with a Tall Nut, but as you can see, a couple of American zombies later, we were able to grab that win. Next up is Unlimited, and he fell into the same exact trap as Emre. He skipped basic zombies entirely, and while basically setups can work in a very high competitive setting, it is generally not advised because of how much game knowledge it requires to pull off. To punish his lack of early game, I decided to play the most aggressive plan strategy in the game, which is the Skadishroom aggro strategy. Without any basic zombies to contest anything, my Skadishrooms basically became 50 cost pea shooters. His economy was basically dead from the start. In round 2, I noticed he made the same exact mistake as plants. This time, I'm choosing Imp, which is basically the aggro Skadishroom strategy but for zombies. With no real early game, my Imps are basically completely uncontested, and they could eventually overwhelm his entire defense in literal seconds. My next opponent will be Plate, and he's running one of the most dangerous loadouts in the current meta. It's the so-called 3 insta strategy. The reason this setup is so strong is because Waterpod and Seastar alone are able to completely stabilize from a basic rush at the start. But thankfully, I had enough practice against this deck since we've been desperately trying to come up with a solution to it. I immediately responded by picking Newspaper and Screen No Shield zombies. Since he's not running any coffee beans and he's also stuck with a straight shooter, in this case the Seastar fruit, that cannot bypass my shield zombies. I then used my Flag Zombie to force his last explosive to be a Pickle Pepper, which is much less less flexible than let's say a cherry bomb is. By pressuring the outer lanes early, I basically took control of the early game tempo. Once I realized he couldn't keep up with the flag wave cycle, I dropped the Giga Gargantua into a mowerless lane to secure a quick checkmate. In the next round, I had to adapt to the flag zombie deck. I used Pickle Pepper to prevent the flag zombie chain reaction, and because Plight picked Bungee Zombie before I even committed any attacker, I was able to pick Bee Shooter, which is slightly cheaper than Bungee Zombie in cost, meaning he loses the trade when stealing it. Because he had essentially wasted one entire seed slot on a Bungee, it was relatively easy to destroy his entire economy with no extra pressure. Any flag zombie wave would be immediately eliminated by my Pickle Pepper. In match 14, I played against Camel, and I made a mistake that should have ended my entire game right here. I actually miscalculated my Skady Shroom timing against his backup dancer. Under any normal circumstances, this mistake would have been devastating and should have costed me the entire round. I lost a lawnmower and my entire defense in that lane was wide open. I really did not deserve to stabilize from this, but I got lucky. Because Camel didn't pick any basic zombies in his deck, he had no way to capitalize on my mistake. He couldn't possibly flood the entire lane with cheap enough units fast enough to destroy my Skady Rush. Guys, always pick basic zombie unless you know exactly what you're doing. Without them, you basically throw games away like these. In round 2, however, Camel tried the Sea Starfruit setup, but he had no idea how to properly play it, which resulted into a devastating loss of his early game. He was way too slow with his water pods and he didn't know how to stabilize his setup properly. Wait a minute. Why can't I hear boss music playing? Oh no. Meat. Kropan. While our previous opponents were really strong OG versus mode players, Kropan never actually played the old versus mode. All his game knowledge comes exclusively from the DLC meta. We've both actually trained together for months now. And I can tell you, Kropan is very different from the normal competitive player. He doesn't play the meta at all. Instead, he likes to invent his own meta. He is the opposite of what you would call a meta slave. And because of that, anything he plays and does becomes extremely unpredictable to hard counter. He is somehow able to take complete meme setups and make them competitive. He has analyzed his mods so deeply that he's actually the reason some of the balance changes were even made. He's a very scary opponent to face, I'm not gonna lie guys. Kropan loves playing mind games. First, he is a lot smarter than he lets on. Just watch his tournament match against Karma Police, where he strategically places his basic zombie on column 8. Normally, you're placing it in column 7 by maximizing your aggression, but by placing it one tile behind, you get to give your basic zombie a one tile head start because it wastes one entire range from the push room if the opponent plays off of muscle memory alone. This then barely squeezes out a tiny advantage by decreasing the effectiveness of the first push room. At the start of round 1, he revealed one of his most iconic inventions. He is one of the few people that have actually managed to create a competitive plant setup that uses 0 coffee beans and 0 push rooms. He also invented a strategy in a meta where squash was constantly getting banned. He calls this loadout washed potatoes. The reason this works well is because of how efficient Potato Mine and Tangle Kelp are on their own. I've played against this setup countless times already and I've been struggling a lot against it. My only hope was his walnut pick mistake at the end. By picking walnut instead of pickle pepper, he had essentially threw the game. Thankfully, because he has no pickle pepper left, my flag zombies could eventually overrun him. In round 2, Kropan made yet another great mistake. Similar to Yes Name, it seems that he was out of shape from not playing versus mode for weeks because he started to pick Balloon Zombie early on, which allowed me to react with an early cactus pick. He could have gotten away with it by picking Screener Shield Zombie to punish my cactus, but instead he allowed me to pick 2 of the best soft instants in the entire game. Yes, that's right, he also didn't ban them for some reason. Normally, his unpredictiveness makes him a really hard opponent to face, but not banning Squash, man, that has to be trolling. Especially in the 75 meta. And just when I thought I could take a break, an old face has just returned. Yes, that's right, Yes Name is back. And I can tell he has trained a lot after his 2 losses, because I had to try hard for my life this time. I won't lie, this almost felt like he took it personal. He was literally playing with terrifying precision this time, and he barely made any mistakes. His last pick into Screen Door Shield was a smart and brutal pick, which completely threw me off. It effectively banned me from picking Starfruit, which I desperately needed to shotgun the skeleton zombies. This was a nightmare scenario for me. I'm forced to pick Cabbage Pole now, meaning I have no real way of defending myself from the skeleton zombies swarm any longer. My only way to counter skeleton zombies is with my Hypnoshrooms, but I already require this to counter his ladder zombie. I think you can see the problem here. I will eventually lose the war of attrition. I was extremely cooked. To make up for the horrible pick fates for me, I had to play everything perfectly if I even wanted to have a chance. If I can't rush his Grey Swans fast enough, he would slowly drain my resources away over time. And then, I just got a heart attack. He was able to breach lane 1. Any normal player would have cut his losses and moved on to the next game, but that's out of the question. Any loss of momentum could mean the end to my flawless win streak. I was barely able to counter a skeleton zombie with a desperation Hypnoshroom, but there was still another massive problem. The basic zombie behind the skeleton zombie had actually survived. My only accessible resources now was Cabbage Poles and Pushroom, so I took whatever I had and tried to kill the basic zombie before I could reach my house. The first cabbage sadly didn't make it, but I had one more chance if I just played it perfectly here. Now, it all comes down to this last Cabbage Pole. Holy We actually made it. This was the most intense moment I might have had in this game mode. After that sweaty first round, I stopped trying to play mind games and picked my predictable but reliable Leafcock setup. Because Justname decided to pick his attack last, I had a rare opportunity to pick Brickhead Zombie, because now he cannot respawn with Chomper, Tangle Kelp, Lemonade, or even Hypnoshroom any longer. But I still wasn't in the safe. I knew my win condition. I had to outswarm him before I could stabilize his board. If he was able to get his Snoopy and Magnetron Core running, my entire defense would eventually collapse. Believe it or not, but the MVP of this round was actually Leaf Blower. When you protect them with basic zombies on top, they become very effective against Snowpies, because Snowpies cannot deal high enough DPS to kill the Leaf Blower on time. This then allowed my Leaf Blowers to stay alive long enough to trigger its ability multiple times, which therefore disrupted his economy by a large margin. I tried to bait his Cherry Bomb out so I could send my Gladiantua, and once his Cherry was gone, I saw an opportunity and spammed every single resource I had in his one weak lane. Even a Desperation Cherry Bomb wasn't enough to stop the push, because the Brickhead Zombie would survive the explosion anyway. We have officially defeated Justname for a third time. This was amazing news for our current win streak. But the grind doesn't end here. In game 17, I faced Baconletics. I noticed that his deck was missing a clear win condition. He mostly only picked early game. This was the perfect opportunity for me to showcase Fireshroom. We can place him in column 6 to override the Trash Can grid item. Normally, the Trash Can zombie drops the trash while grid item as long as there's no plant in the same tile. 4 Fireshrooms later, the game was pretty much won. In round 2, Baconletics picked no finisher again, which was really strange, but it meant that my Greystone economy was left completely uncontested. And while you can technically win with a 10-minute win con, it is really hard to pull off, because you'll be constantly bombarded with an insane zombie economy. In game 18, Baconletics wanted a rematch. This time he chose a flag zombie setup, but because he picked both Newspaper and Ladder Zombie, I was able to pick Pickle Pepper and counter all 3 of his zombies, including Flag Zombie, due to the splash attack the Pepper Ball provides against the swarms of the Flag Zombie. Combined with Pickle Pepper, and this was yet another easy sweep. In round 2, he had made yet another beginner mistake, where he picked Mortarshroom early on. I was able to punish him with Digger Zombie now, because his attacker was already committed and cannot be changed to a Split Bee or a Starfruit any longer. I knew he was holding Pickle Pepper to counter my Flag Swarm, so I strategically chose not to go for the Flag Zombie route this game. Instead, I focused all my economy on my mid to late game zombies, and I spread them out smartly to reduce his Pickle Pepper effectiveness. Eventually, he slowly became overwhelmed by my Digger Zombie pressure, which slowly ate away his economy. Oh no, not you again. Cropan is back and he wants his revenge. By now, we have almost reached our Ultimate League rank, but facing Cropan again will not be an easy task. I can't underestimate him, not if I've lost so many times to him in the past. I had to improvise if I didn't want to be predictable. Even though he had picked Backup Dancer and Pole Vaulting Zombie, which are 2 zombies that are traditionally hard counters to my Scaredy-Shroom aggro setup, I still picked Scaredy-Shroom, and I tried to compensate my lack of early game control with a Blood Orange. But it was a very risky move. All it takes is one single zombie to cause a chain reaction and my offense will be completely dead. To make matters even worse, I picked Blood Orange into Gladiantua, which is a bold move in itself. Once the Gladiantua got too close to my Scaredy-Shrooms, Cropan could use that as an opening to shut down every single lane of mine, and that's exactly what happened in the bottom lane. I had to act fast. I needed to shovel my Scaredy-Shrooms away ASAP so my Lawnmower could trigger in time. It sounds crazy, but by sacrificing the Lawnmower quick enough, I can prevent a full shutdown and go for a fast win, and it proved to be effective. Cropan was forced into a Desperation Gladiantua on lane 3 instead of going for the win. This was amazing news for me, because even if he breached through lane 3, all he would do is just eat yet another Lawnmower. Arriving in round 2, Cropan chose his signature washed potato setup again. To beat it, I had to pick Digger Zombie now because he early committed to Blood Orange, which only has a 50-second recharge time compared to the 30 seconds of Digger Zombies. I swarmed lanes 1 and 5 so his Blood Orange wouldn't get an easy 2-for-1. Once the Blood Orange was used, I was able to breach lane 1. It allowed me to use Bungee Zombie to keep his economy low. This allows me to block his momentum. From here, it was a downward spiral, and with that, the Cropan saga finally ends here. With Cropan defeated, we move on to SPG. This is also a good example of how to know when to stop sending basics in one lane. As you can see, he had already stabilized lane 3 with his Pushrooms, so sending basic zombies would only drain my economy away. I had to adapt by switching the lane side pressure, and because he was getting greedy with his Sunflowers by placing them in column 3 rather than column 4, I was able to send a basic zombie to bait out a Cabbage Pole into then immediately respawning with a Buckethead zombie. And here's also a perfect example of how Blood Orange is terrible against heavy zombies. It couldn't kill my Buckethead, it even made it worse by losing his Lawnmower quicker. Once his economy was suppressed enough, my Flag Zombie was able to keep applying pressure and prevent stabilization. He had no Doomshroom or Pickle Pepper to respawn, so it became my main win condition. In the next round, SPG went for a hyper-aggressive early game with a Newspaper and Backup Dancer. This now meant that I have a very strong pick with Fireshroom, as it shuts down his aggressive swarms quite effectively. When he was able to clear out the Lawnmower at the end with his Gladiantua, was already way too slow of a win con, because he didn't manage to trigger a Lawnmower in his early game. Sending heavy Gargantua variants only becomes strong if the lane has no Lawnmower to prevent the game over. While 2 Gargantuas can be used as a win con, it is usually way too slow to pull off. With just a few elo short of the ultimate Ultimate League rank, and our next opponent will be Bacon Ludex again. It seems he hasn't learned from his prior mistakes, because he proceeded to only take one single finisher in his loadout. Because Brickhead Zombie has a 60-second recharge, and because it's shut down by my Lemonade, I had essentially checkmated him in the picking phase. All I needed to do was develop one Fume Shroom in every single lane, and that's it. Well, what can I say? In the next round, he didn't even take any early game, so I was able to check him for imps. This easily overwhelmed him and caused him to lose in under 1 minute and 30 seconds. He was trying to replicate washed potatoes, but there's a clear reason why you can only run washed potatoes with a 100 cost attacker. Fire P was far too slow for my imps. Next up is Capri, an old friend of mine and a tryout playtester for DLC. He doesn't play versus mode too often, but he loves to try out PvZ a lot. He preemptively picked Bungee Zombie way too early, so I was able to punish him with a Scaredy Shroom. I don't think I need to explain why stealing a Scaredy Shroom isn't a positive trait for the zombies. You typically only pick basic zombie as a reaction to an expensive attacker, or if you want to prevent an expensive attacker from being picked at all. Because it was down an entire C slot, and because my Ghost Pepper was so effective at clearing his early game pressure, I rushed him down before he could start to overwhelm me with his dances. In round 2, Capri went for the classic OG versus mode strategy by running Magnet Shroom and Repeater. While it is a strong setup in OG versus mode, banning kind of destroys his build on DLC because of how important Squash is in it. I knew he would be weak to skeleton zombies, because he only has one slow explosive plant. Once his Cherry Bomb was drawn out, it became close to impossible for Capri to survive. He has already lost way too many sunflowers. Capri immediately queued up again for game number 23. But picking basic zombie and newspaper is generally a strong setup. It's much stronger if you pick the newspaper at the end of your loadout, because the plant player might not be able to adapt into the swarm any longer. Right now, because he had picked newspaper, basic, as well as Catapult Zombie, I was able to counter all three quite effectively with Fume Shrooms. Because Lemonade and Hypno Shroom shut off Gargantua and Giga Football Zombie completely, Capri essentially had no more win con left. In the next round, Capri adapted and switch shot his Repeater to Starfruit in his Magnet Shroom setup from earlier, and I was genuinely surprised at how well I was doing. I decided to pull off a high level tech, which I'll simply be calling the Magnet exploit. Now, I want you to pay close attention, because right now I'm using my Screener Shield Zombie as a bait. You see, Magnet Shroom takes some time before it's able to steal the next metallic item, and by timing it precisely, I'm able to manipulate the Magnet Shroom into stealing the pickaxe from my Digger Zombie before he appears from the ground. This prevents him from changing his directions, and he will instead walk towards your house. It worked perfectly here and got rid of his lawnmower. This then created an easy opening for my Giga Gargantua Wincon, and because I was evil, I had to pull off the trick once more just to BM my opponent. Yeah, that is the power of the Magnet Shroom exploit, and with that, we only have one more match we needed to win. So far, I have a 23 KD, so losing this last game would be devastating. My final opponent will be Freaky Screechy. I decided to go with my Trusted Leaf Gog setup. Luckily, Screechy underestimated my Screener Shield zombies by picking Repeater as a straight attacker and no counter to my Screener Shields at all. Because of that, my shields were completely uncontested and I was able to spam one every 15 seconds. In round 2, I saw the perfect opportunity to shut off his entire rush with Fume Shrooms. His only finisher is Gladiantua, which can be dealt with Lemonade and Blood Orange. Or so I thought. I had completely underestimated his Gladiantua and overestimated the damage done by my Blood Orange. While Gladiantua is immune to every single status effect in the game, meaning Blood Orange won't buff him, Blood Orange also only deals 900 damage in total, which is only half the damage of your traditional insta. Because the damage was so low, Screechy was actually able to create a pressure point on my lawn by removing a lawnmower. This was getting extremely scary. One more Gladiantua and I would be done. I did everything in my power to stall the Gladiantua as long as I can, so that my Fume Shrooms could damage it as much as possible. If I missed shuffling away my plant before the Gladiantua smash attack hit the ground, I would not only leave a Doomshroom crater, but it also squishes all plants in a 3x3 area, which would be enough to lose me the entire game. At the end, it was a brutal fight, but I was barely able to breach through the Gladiantua by just barely defeating it. And there you have it. We have officially reached Ultimate League by winning 24 games in a row. We've had way too many close calls, and while I'm still at the top of the list with a 24 KD, some people have actually managed to surpass me in the leaderboards. Mainly YesName and a deleted user who used to go by the name of C Starfruit. This has been an incredible journey. It proves that with enough dedication, you can reach the top of the ladder. If you stayed until the very end and enjoyed my video, please consider leaving a like and a sub. I would greatly appreciate that. If you're still watching to the end, then why won't you let me know your personal opinion on the versus mode game mode in your comments below? I actually would love to hear where the community stands on this. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.